girls, Abigail and Anna. I love Kansas so much. I think it's a wonderful state. I'm proud to live here, go to school here. It's so fun. I love it. Everyone's so sweet. Yes, so I'm a first-year missionary with the Culture Project. I just graduated from college back in May. So I was just in your shoes only a few months ago. And as a Culture Project missionary, well, raise your hand if you've heard of the Culture Project before. Oh, amazing. Yes. Great. That was a lot of hands. Awesome. Yes, as a Culture Project missionary, I've received a lot of formation on St. Pope John Paul II's teachings of the theology of the body. Raise your hand if you've heard of the theology of the body. So many hands. I love it. Great. Yes. If you haven't heard of it, that is so okay. These teachings are awesome. And basically uncover the beauty and the truth and the goodness of human sexuality, right? And they explain the virtue of chastity. And they ultimately reveal the desire within every single one of us, which is to be loved, right? And as a Culture Project missionary, my main job is to go into schools and to talk to students about human dignity and human sexuality. So their worth as individuals and their identity as individuals, made as male and female. It's so cool. And what I love so much about my job, and what I love really so much about the Catholic Church, because we're so blessed to be Catholic, right? It's awesome. Yes. Yeah. Is that we have the answers to the greatest, strongest, most powerful desire within every single human being's heart, which is to be loved, right? Personally, one of my favorite parts of my mission year so far has been not only receiving this, yes, incredible formation from the theology of the body, but then also taking it and reflecting on my life before knowing what I know now. And the Lord is helping me realize that so many of the ways that I acted in high school, in college, and so many of my thoughts and behaviors, right, my actions, all reflect my desire to be loved. Now that all being said, today I want to share more with you about our human condition, and then I want to talk to you girls about ways that I personally grasped for love in my life, especially in college. And then I just want to share with you a clear path that each of us can take to obtain the love that we were all created for. How does that sound? Yeah? Great. So the human condition, what do I mean when I say the human condition? Now, each of us, as we know, has been made so beautifully and differently and intricately and finely and wonderfully, yes. All of us here are so different. We have different likes and interests and dislikes and talents and gifts and strengths and weaknesses and abilities and hair color and eye color, right? You name it. And sure, all of us here this weekend were bonded together by our faith. Yes, we have that in common. But even on a more basic level, all of us here, and every single person on the planet, is bonded together by our humanity. And at the core of our humanity is our desire to be loved. Yes. Now, we hear a lot about love in Genesis, right? We all know the story. It was ideal. Adam lived in perfect harmony with himself. Eve lived in perfect harmony with herself. They lived in perfect harmony with each other. They lived in perfect harmony with God. And then we know Eve reached for that apple and shoved it in the van, right? It's like, what the heck, Eve, why did you have to do that? And ever since Eve reached for that apple and she committed that original sin, God's perfect plan for humanity has never been the same. It stinks, right? And now, because of that original sin, there are these divisions. There's these divisions that the Lord did not originally intend for us to experience, right? These divisions within ourselves, and these divisions between ourselves and others, and these divisions between ourselves and the Lord. Yet deep within us, we know that we were not created to experience these divisions, but rather, we were created for perfect love, right? And at the Culture Project, we often like to say that we were created by love, for love, to love. Beautiful. And we are aware of this truth at such a young age, because it is what we were created for. When I was little, I had a best friend, and his name was Patrick, and we went to preschool together, and we were family friends, and we did everything together, we played together, went to school together, and our families were friends, so we were with each other all of the time. And I was madly in love with Patrick. I know. And one day after preschool, I ran up to my mom and I said, Mom, one day Pat and I are going to get married and he's going to buy me flowers. Now, unfortunately, I guess not unfortunately, Patrick and I didn't get married. And no, he didn't buy me flowers. But I shared this story with you to just show that at such a young age, from our earliest years, we are aware of our desire to love and to be loved. Like, we just want to be loved, right? Because that's what we were created for. And I'm so confident that each of you can reflect and think of a time, be it from preschool or middle school or high school or now, where you knew you just wanted to be loved. And sure, maybe you can't think of a time, where you're reflecting on your future wedding day or thinking about that, or your future husband buying you flowers. But I'm so confident you can think of your own times where you knew you just wanted to be loved so, so bad. And maybe you also knew that you were created for a far better love than what the world around you and the people around you were offering you. Because girls, we were not created for the divisions that we feel and experience in our lives. That was not the Lord's original plan for us. And He so desperately wants to mend these divisions within ourselves, these divisions between ourselves and others, and these divisions between ourselves and Him. But unfortunately, there is a large gap between what we were created for, what we so desperately want, and what is given to us. In our culture today, there's this large gap. And in our country, 92% of teenage girls want to change something about how they look. Between 60 and 80% of college students have engaged in the hookup culture. 69% of people think that living together before marriage is acceptable. And 39% of all marriages end in divorce. Pornography is rampant. Having sex in college is normal. Living in with your boyfriend is to be expected. And it's so clear, whether the culture realizes it or not, that it is crying for help. It's crying for help. Girls, the culture has set the bar so extremely low for us young people, and we should be offended. Amen? Amen. We should be offended. And sure, what the media smushes in our faces may seem attractive or may appear alluring, but the truth is that the culture does not care about the longings of our hearts. The culture does not care about the longings of our hearts. Right? Let's see. One second. All right, girls. Yeah, so I'm from outside Philadelphia, as Megan said. And I originally went to college down in the South. And I was so drawn to the sunshine, the beaches, and the restaurants, and the nightlife, and the beauty of this college city that I was living in, which is fine, right? Which is okay. But long story short, I was very focused on the superficial. And I cared so much about what people thought about me. And to be honest, girls, I thought the Catholic center at my school was weird. I didn't want to get involved in clubs on campus because that wasn't the thing to do. Right? And I wanted great friends. I wanted great friends so badly, and I often think about what my dad would tell me growing up, which was, surround yourself with excellent people, Catherine. Surround yourself with excellent people. And I wanted to, but I was not putting myself in situations where excellent people were to be found. And I remember I called my older sister one night. This was my sophomore year of college. And I was just saying, her name's Mary Grace. Mary Grace, like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm really struggling to meet good girls, like good people and good friends who are on the same page as me. And I'm so frustrated. And no one told me that making good friends in college would be difficult. And my sister, she just asked me, well, Kat, what are you trying to do to meet people? And I got a bit defensive. And I said, well, I'm putting myself out there. I'm going to pre-games that I'm invited to. I'm going to the bars. I'm going to parties. I'm doing my part. Like, I'm trying to be social, right? And I'll never forget my older sister, Mary. She just responded, Kat, you're never going to find your best friends at the bars. And I remember thinking, she's right, per usual. This is what her sisters are. Girls, I was so frustrated with my life because I thought I had everything I always wanted. I was living in this beautiful city, in a really cool apartment, had awesome internships, was going out on the weekends, with all these things that I always wanted for myself, and I just felt so empty. And I was confused by it. And I knew that I was missing something in my life, but I didn't know what that something was. And I valued my faith. Like Megan said, I come from a great Irish Catholic family, and I grew up Catholic, going to Catholic schools, Mass on Sundays, and I'd pray occasionally and casually in college. But I got to this point where I would purposely get to Mass a few minutes late. I don't know if anyone can relate to that, hopefully not. But yeah, at this point, I purposely get to Mass a few minutes late because I didn't want to be there. But anyway, I should be there. So I'd still go, just differently. Yeah. A few weeks after that conversation with my sister, I went out to the bar. So clearly I didn't listen to her advice. And I just remember so vividly being on the dance floor, crammed between so many bodies, like music blaring, strobe lights flashing, drinks being spilled. And I just remember kind of taking a step back and scanning my surroundings. And I remember thinking to myself, no one here actually cares about me. And I left. And I walked home. And girls, I wanted to be living an excellent life. I did. But I didn't have the support and the friends and the community that I needed to live a good, virtuous life. Right? Like we find here this weekend, it's so cool and it's so special and it's so needed. And it's so clear to me, like especially that night when I left that bar, that I was just crying to be loved. Just wanted to be loved so badly, to have the Lord mend those divisions within myself, and those divisions between myself and other people, and those divisions between myself and Him so badly. Right? And with that something that I was missing, that I mentioned earlier, I now realize, and I'm so grateful that it's my job to literally share with students all year, to share with you ladies today, but that something I was missing, was authentic love in my life. And by the grace of God, in the words of a really cool priest on a mission trip to the Galapagos Islands, of all places, I realized that I needed to transfer schools and start living differently. I needed to. And that's what I did. And at the Culture Project, we like to use the terminology that we are striving to live lives of virtue. And now I see that when I transferred schools and I started, living differently, living virtuously, that was the beginning. That was the beginning of my striving to live a good, solid, virtuous life. and I sort of just jumped right in. I joined a Focus Bible study. I started my own Bible study. I started going to daily mass, going to the sacraments, befriending priests, going to confession, all of these wonderful things that so many of us in this room do, yes? And it brought so much joy, because we're created to live good, virtuous lives. And I remember there was this one day where I was on the phone with a priest who I was getting close with, I befriended, and we were talking about my Bible study, I believe, and after I hung up the phone, I just remember thinking to myself, what is my life? I'm just casually talking to priests on the phone now. This is so cool. It brought so much joy. And it still brings so much joy, do not get me wrong. But I just want to say that living a virtuous life, girls, is difficult sometimes. And it is. Especially living in the culture that we're living in now. That's okay to recognize, right? Although I was so confident in my decision to transfer schools, and to go to Bible study and surround myself with excellent people, and go to daily mass, and go to confession, do all these awesome things, it was difficult at times, letting go, of my old lifestyle. And I had to, and I still am learning how to navigate friendships differently, how to spend my time on the weekends a little differently now. And I just say this in case any of you can relate. It's okay if it's difficult sometimes. It is, and I understand, and it makes sense if it's difficult sometimes. I recently read a blog post about this topic, and I really liked it. I'm just going to share some of what I read with you, because it was explaining how living a good, virtuous, spiritual life does not always mean changing your friend groups, or withdrawing from your favorite activities, or changing your jobs. Sure, sometimes these dramatic changes are necessary, as it was for me at that point in my life where I transferred schools, but most of the time, in most cases, it's not absolutely necessary, right? But what's new from living a good, virtuous, spiritual life is that the things and the people and the events in our lives, we don't just see them merely as they are, but we begin to realize that they are the different ways that the Lord is revealing himself to us. That is so cool, right? And this blog post, it went on to say, I love this, that the spiritual life can be lived in as many ways as there are people. I'll say that again because I really like it. The spiritual life can be lived in as many ways as there are people. And I think, heck, the spiritual life should be lived in as many ways as there are people. Girls, each of us is so beautifully, uniquely different. It's so cool. And there's not this one perfect way to live a good Catholic life as a girl in college right now. There's not. And that's good, because we're all different. Right? So it's going to look different for each of us. Now, a way that I was able to deepen my spiritual life and ultimately live more fully alive, as we like to say at the Culture Project, or more fully experience the love that the Lord originally had planned for me, is through the virtue of chastity. All right, I'm going to grab some water. Okay. Now, to share a little bit more about my background, so I'm from outside Philadelphia. The Culture Project is headquartered in Philadelphia. So I had heard about the Culture Project in its earliest years when it first had been founded. So that was when I was in early high school. And so I knew about the Culture Project. I knew that they had missionaries. I knew that they spoke about chastity. And to be so honest with you girls, let me be very honest with you today, I thought it was weird. I really did. I thought that the Culture Project was weird, and I remember I met missionaries. I thought their joy was a little bit strange. And here I am. The Lord's so funny. And looking back, it's so easy for me to realize that it was just so much easier to be defensive and to put up walls, when I met these missionaries. was for me to be curious about their joy and like wonder, what do they have that I don't? It's a lot easier for me to, they're weird. No thanks. Oh my goodness. Now at that time in my life, and until recently really, I didn't have a full understanding of the virtue of chastity. In high school, and a little bit into college, all I knew about chastity was that it meant that I couldn't have sex until I was married. And that didn't seem like super attractive to me, if I'm being honest with you. Now, with a full understanding of the virtue of chastity, I'm able to see that it is so much more than just not having sex until marriage, right? So much more. And I want to give you a clear, solid definition of chastity, because sometimes it can tend to be one of these buzzwords thrown around in Catholic circles that like you think you should know, but you don't know, but you don't want to ask. That's okay. So it's my goal that you walk out of this room having a clear understanding of what the virtue of chastity is and how it actually can be applied to your life. So, get your pens ready. Chastity is the virtue, little side note, virtue is the habit of doing what is good. So virtue is the habit of doing what is good. So chastity is the virtue which aligns the level of intimacy in a relationship with the level of commitment in a relationship. I'll say that one more time. Chastity is the virtue which aligns the level of intimacy in a relationship with the level of commitment in a relationship. And chastity is a lifestyle which allows us to live in the reality of our relationships right now. And everyone is called to live a life of chastity. It's not just for people who are dating. It doesn't just mysteriously end once you're married. No, every single person is called to live a life of chastity. Whether they are 19 years old, 22 years old, 46 years old, 75 years old. Everyone is called to live a life of chastity. Whether you are single, dating, discerning religious life, engaged, married, everyone. Now, I want to go into this a little bit more because I know that it can be like this abstract word and idea and it's a lifestyle. What does that mean? Let's think about it this way. The way that I interact with a stranger on the street versus the way that I interact with my best friend